Throughout history, humanity has been captivated by the mystery of genius. We admire it, we fear it, and sometimes we worship it. The word genius carries a kind of sacred weight. It suggests not just talent, but something otherworldly, almost divine. Yet for all the admiration we give brilliant minds, there is another side of the story that is often left in the shadows. A darker, more unsettling truth. The truth is this: genius is not always beautiful. It is not always safe. And sometimes, it can even be terrifying. The terrifying part of genius isn't found in the brilliance itself, but in what brilliance can do when it collides with human weakness, ambition, or obsession. The most brilliant people in history have also been some of the most misunderstood, some of the most feared, and yes, in some cases, some of the most dangerous. Today we're going to explore this paradox, the dark side of genius, what makes brilliant people terrifying. Chapter 1, The Myth of Genius. Before we dive into the shadows, let's first understand why genius fascinates us so deeply. For centuries, the idea of genius has been romanticized. The Greeks believed in the demon, a guiding spirit,
that whispered ideas into the ears of great poets and thinkers. In the Renaissance, genius was seen as divine inspiration, a gift granted to chosen individuals.
Even today, we use words like gifted, as though brilliance is something handed down from the heavens. But genius isn't simply a blessing, it's a double-edged sword. Because to see what others can't see is to live apart from them. To think at a level beyond the crowd is to feel alien among them. And that distance, that isolation, is where the darker aspects begin to creep in. Chapter 2. The Loneliness of Brilliance. Every genius, at some point in their life, faces a profound loneliness. Think of Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor, who gave us alternating current, radio waves, and the foundations of modern technology. Tesla lived much of his life in solitude, obsessing over his ideas. He wasn't married. He avoided close relationships. He once confessed that he loved a pigeon more than any human being, because in the bird, he found unconditional companionship. This loneliness isn't accidental. Genius often comes with a kind of separation, because the mind of a genius is busy wandering in places others cannot follow. Conversations that seem normal to most people often bore or frustrate the genius, because their brain is racing miles ahead. Isolation, then, becomes both a refuge and a curse. And in that isolation, strange things can begin to grow. Obsessions, paranoia, and an overwhelming detachment from the ordinary rules that bind society together. This is where genius begins to turn from admirable to unsettling. Chapter 3. Obsession. The fuel of genius and madness. If there is one trait that unites almost every genius, it is obsession. The ability to focus relentlessly on a single idea, a single problem, or a single pursuit is what allows brilliant people to break boundaries. Beethoven composed music even when deaf, writing symphonies that would outlast centuries. Isaac Newton spent sleepless nights studying gravity and optics, developing theories that changed our understanding of the universe. But obsession has a darker side. When unchecked, it becomes consuming. Howard Hughes, one of the most brilliant industrialists and aviators of the 20th century, was also one of its most tormented minds. His obsession with perfection, hygiene, and control spiraled into full-blown obsessive-compulsive disorder. He locked himself away in hotel rooms for years, paralyzed by fear of germs, his genius suffocating under the weight of his compulsions. This is the terrifying irony of obsession. The very force that fuels extraordinary brilliance can also drive extraordinary self-destruction. Chapter 4. The Moral Blindness of Genius. Another shadow that follows genius is moral blindness. To be brilliant at one thing does not mean to be wise about everything. History is full of geniuses who achieved great intellectual feats but failed miserably in human ethics. Take Wernher von Braun, the German rocket scientist. His genius led to the development of rocket technology that eventually took humans to the moon. But before that, his brilliance was used for war. Under Nazi rule, von Braun's rockets rained destruction on London, and thousands of prisoners died in horrific conditions building his machines. This raises a haunting question. What happens when genius is placed in the service of evil? The answer is one of the darkest truths of human history. Genius without morality is not just terrifying, it's catastrophic. Chapter 5. The Madness-Genius Connection. One of the most enduring ideas about genius is its connection to madness. Is it true that brilliant people are more prone to insanity? Aristotle once wrote, "No great mind has ever existed without a touch of madness." And modern research seems to agree. Studies have shown that highly creative and intelligent individuals are more likely to struggle with mood disorders, bipolar disorder, and depression. Consider Vincent van Gogh, a genius with a paintbrush, who captured emotions and colors in ways no one had before. Yet his life was marked by deep psychological turmoil. He cut off his own ear. He spent time in asylums, and eventually, he ended his own life. What makes this connection so unsettling is that it suggests the very fire that gives birth to genius may also burn the person alive from within. Chapter 6. The fear genius inspires in others. It's not just that geniuses can be terrifying in themselves. Sometimes, it's the way society reacts to them that creates fear. Socrates, the great philosopher, was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth of Athens. What was his crime? Asking too many questions, challenging the status quo, seeing through the illusions of his time. Galileo faced persecution for daring to suggest that the earth revolved around the sun. His genius threatened the religious and political order, and so he was silenced, forced to live under house arrest. In both cases, it wasn't madness or evil that made these geniuses terrifying. It was their ability to disrupt the world, to reveal truths society wasn't ready to face. So here we are, at the beginning of our journey into the dark side of genius. We've seen how loneliness, obsession, moral blindness, madness, and society's fear can all make brilliance feel terrifying. But we've only scratched the surface. In the chapters ahead, we will explore deeper the psychology of genius, the myths that surround it, the dangers of power mixed with brilliance, and the paradox of how the very minds that illuminate humanity can also cast its darkest shadows. Stay with me as we continue unraveling the mystery of genius and why those who shine brightest can sometimes also be the most terrifying. If there's one thing more dangerous than a genius in isolation, it is a genius in power. History has shown us time and time again that when extraordinary intelligence is paired with authority, the results can be breathtaking or horrifying. Power magnifies genius, but it also magnifies its flaws. Take Julius Caesar, a master strategist and political thinker. His brilliance in war and governance transformed Rome from a republic into an empire. But his ambition, his calculation, and his refusal to yield turned allies into enemies. His genius reshaped civilization, but it also inspired fear, betrayal, and eventually, his assassination. Or consider Adolf Hitler. Though not a genius in the traditional intellectual sense, Hitler possessed a terrifying form of manipulative genius, the ability to weaponize words, psychology, and mass persuasion. His speeches could ignite entire crowds, moving them to act against their own humanity. Combined with political power, his cunning unleashed one of the greatest horrors in human history. This is what makes brilliance in power so terrifying. Intelligence without empathy becomes a weapon. And once that weapon is placed in the hands of a leader, the consequences ripple far beyond the individual. Chapter 8. The Genius Who Plays God. One of the most unsettling aspects of genius is its temptation to transcend human limits. Many brilliant people, having pushed the boundaries of knowledge, feel the urge to play God, to tamper with life, death, and morality itself. Consider the story of Dr. Joseph Mengele, the infamous Nazi doctor. He was highly intelligent, with a mind sharpened by years of study. Yet his brilliance was twisted into cruelty. He performed horrific experiments on prisoners, treating human lives as toys for his curiosity. In Mengele, we see the chilling truth. Intellect without conscience becomes monstrosity. But this isn't confined to history. In our own era, debates over artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and biohacking echo the same dilemma. The people leading these fields are undoubtedly brilliant. But what happens if their genius is directed not toward human good, but toward reckless ambition? What happens when curiosity outweighs compassion? The genius who plays God may change the world. But whether that change is salvation or destruction depends entirely on the morality they choose or abandon. Chapter 9. The isolation that too warps the mind. We spoke earlier about loneliness, but let's go deeper. The isolation of genius does not just mean being misunderstood. It can become an echo chamber, where one's own ideas grow unchecked. Without challenge, without grounding, the mind of a genius can spiral into strange, even dangerous territory. Think of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Once a brilliant mathematician teaching at Harvard and Berkeley, Kaczynski withdrew from society, retreating into a solitary cabin. In his isolation, his intelligence fed on itself, twisting into an ideology against technology and modern civilization. His writings were disturbingly logical but also deeply paranoid. That paranoia drove him to commit acts of terror. Isolation, then, does not simply make a genius lonely. It can create monsters. Because a mind that powerful, when left alone too long, can begin to invent its own world, a world where destruction feels like salvation. Chapter 10. The Seduction of Genius. But let's not forget another dark power of genius, its ability to seduce. Genius can be magnetic. Brilliant people often inspire loyalty, admiration, and even love. Their ideas seem larger than life, their words feel prophetic, and that magnetism can lead others to follow them blindly. Consider Jim Jones, the charismatic leader of the people's temple. He wasn't a genius in science or art, but in psychological manipulation. He convinced hundreds of intelligent, educated people to uproot their lives, follow him into the jungle, and ultimately to drink poison at his command. Over 900 people died in what became known as the Jonestown Massacre. This reveals another terrifying truth. The dark side of genius isn't always about what it does to the genius. Sometimes, it's about what it does to everyone around them. Chapter 11. The Fragility of Genius. Another shadow that follows brilliance is fragility. For all their intellectual strength, many geniuses live on the edge of collapse. Their intensity, their obsession, their relentless pursuit of perfection, it often comes at the cost of stability. Look at Sylvia Plath, one of the most brilliant poets of the 20th century. Her words cut with precision and beauty, expressing truths few dared to speak. Yet behind her genius lay unbearable pain. Depression consumed her, and in 1963, she took her own life at just 30 years old. Fragility makes the dark side of genius even more haunting. Because while the world may marvel at the brilliance, the person behind it often suffers silently. To us, they are icons. To themselves, they are battlegrounds. Chapter 12. The Genius as Outsider. Finally, there is the role of genius as the eternal. Outsider, brilliant minds rarely fit neatly into their societies. They are too unconventional, too disruptive, too unwilling to conform. And society, in turn, often rejects them. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly 1,800 poems, yet published only a handful. During her lifetime, she lived much of her life in reclusion. her genius hidden behind the walls of her home. Only after her death did the world realize the depth of her brilliance. This outsider status is a hallmark of genius. It creates innovation, yes, but it also creates estrangement, bitterness, and despair. And sometimes that bitterness turns dangerous. So far, we have seen the loneliness, the obsession, the moral blindness, the madness, the isolation, the seduction, the fragility, and the outsider status that haunt the lives of brilliant people. Together, these shadows form the terrifying paradox of genius. The same qualities that create greatness can also create destruction. But the story is far from over. In the next chapters, we will dive even deeper into the psychological patterns of genius, the thin line between inspiration and insanity, and the haunting legacy left by those whose brilliance turned dark. Chapter 13. The madness of obsession. Every genius has an obsession. It is the fire that fuels their work, the reason they rise before dawn, the reason they sacrifice comfort, friendships, and sometimes even sanity. But obsession is a double-edged sword. What begins as passion can morph into compulsion, and what was once inspiring can turn dangerous. Consider Nikola Tesla. His brilliance gave us alternating current, wireless technology, and inventions far ahead of his time. Yet Tesla was consumed by his obsessions. He worked alone, slept little, and performed bizarre rituals to feed his compulsions. He counted steps, avoided pearls, and claimed to communicate with pigeons. In the end, his genius left him isolated and penniless, dying in a hotel room forgotten by the world he helped electrify. Tesla's story shows us the haunting truth. Genius doesn't just chase ideas, it is hunted by them. Chapter 14. The Tyranny of Perfection. One of the cruelest aspects of brilliance is the demand for perfection. Geniuses often see flaws invisible to others, and this gift can quickly become a curse. Leonardo da Vinci is celebrated as one of history's greatest minds, an artist, inventor, scientist, and visionary. Yet many of his works were left unfinished. His relentless pursuit of perfection kept him from completing projects that might have changed the course of history. He saw possibilities where others saw completeness. To him, nothing was ever truly finished. This endless striving can be beautiful. It is why Da Vinci's surviving works are so revered, but it also illustrates the torment of genius. The bar they set is often unreachable, even for themselves. Chapter 15. The dangerous allure of control. Genius often seeks control. Control over ideas, control over nature, control over people. And, when that desire goes unchecked, it can become terrifying. Take J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. His genius helped end World War II, but also unleashed a weapon of mass destruction, unlike anything the world had ever seen. After the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Oppenheimer famously said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." His brilliance changed history, but it also revealed how genius can slip from control. Once knowledge is unleashed, it cannot be taken back. The power of creation becomes the power of annihilation. This is why many fear genius, not because of what it knows, but because of what it chooses to do with what it knows. Chapter 16. The Weight of Being. Ahead of time. To be a genius is often to live in the future while trapped in the present, and that burden can be unbearable. Galileo. Galilei looked through his telescope and saw truths that contradicted centuries of belief. The earth was not the center of the universe. The heavens did not revolve around us. His discoveries were revolutionary and dangerous. The church silenced him, placed him under house arrest, and branded him a heretic. For daring to speak the truth, Galileo paid with his freedom. This is the curse of seeing too far ahead. They say, world is not always ready for the vision of genius. And in that gap between insight and acceptance, fear grows. Chapter 17. The thin line between inspiration and insanity. We often romanticize the idea of the mad genius, the artist painting through madness, the scientist muttering equations to himself, the poet who finds beauty in despair. But this romantic image hides a painful reality. For many, the line between inspiration and insanity is razor thin. Vincent. Van Gogh produced over 2,000 works of art, filled with color, movement, and life. Yet he battled severe mental illness, suffering from hallucinations, paranoia, and deep depression. His paintings now sell for millions, but during his lifetime, he sold almost nothing. Van Gogh's story reminds us that genius often extracts its price in suffering. The very mind that sees what no one else can also feels what no one else can bear. Chapter 18. The Cult of the Genius. Society has always been fascinated, even obsessed, with genius. We elevate brilliant minds to almost mythical status. We follow them, worship them, even forgive them for things we would never excuse in others. But this cult of genius can be dangerous. Take Steve Jobs. His brilliance in design and innovation transformed technology and culture forever. But those who worked closely with him often described him as cruel, demanding, and sometimes manipulative. Yet because of his genius, these flaws were overlooked, excused, even praised as part of his visionary nature. This reveals the danger of the cult of genius. When society worships brilliance, it risks excusing harm. We forget that genius does not absolve cruelty. Chapter 19. When genius consumes itself. Some geniuses don't need enemies. Their greatest adversary is themselves. Howard Hughes was a billionaire, an inventor, and a film producer. His genius reshaped aviation and Hollywood. But over time, his brilliance consumed him. Paranoia and obsessive-compulsive disorder took hold. He locked himself away in dark rooms, avoiding human contact, terrified of germs and shadows. By the end of his life, Hughes was a shell of the man he once was. Proof that the same intelligence that builds empires can also build prisons. Chapter 20. Why we fear geniuses. So why do brilliant people terrify us? It's not just their intelligence, it's the unpredictability of it. The way their minds leap where ours cannot follow. The way their obsessions defy logic. The way their visions can either save us or destroy us. We fear genius because it reminds us of the thin line between brilliance and madness, between creation and destruction, between beauty and horror. And perhaps most hauntingly, because deep down, we know that the world has always been shaped, for better or worse, by those few individuals who dared to think differently. The story of genius is not just one of inspiration. It is a story of obsession, perfection, control, isolation, madness, and power. It is a story that forces us to ask, do we truly admire genius, or do we secretly fear it? And as we continue this journey, we will dive even deeper into the psychology, the tragedies, and the dark brilliance of those minds who changed, and sometimes destroyed, the world.